this week. Now, one story that was on the most read, it's actually just dropped off the list, but a really interesting story is about scientists calling for mandatory food labels that spell out the impact on the environment of everything from meat to chocolate. They say it would help us as consumers make informed choices about how the food that we eat can contribute to climate change. And let's get more on that story now with our correspondent Helen Briggs. So Helen, just give us a little bit more detail about this call from scientists. What are they trying to achieve?
Well, generally speaking, people do want more information about the food they're buying. We're used to things like labels on health, so you can look and see how much fat, how much sugar. But what we don't always get is clear information about how the food you're buying might affect the planet. And we know that food growing is a big cause of greenhouse gas emissions, right at the top of the list, things like beef and lamb. But there can be some surprises, and people generally want more information on that. But because there's no clear mandatory system, it can be confusing to know what to buy.
OK, well, you've got an avocado on the desk there in front of you, so let's try and have a look at that on the calculator on our website. If we call that up on the screen. There we go. So if you go on to this calculator, it says, which food would you like? You click on avocado. How often do you have it? Let's say 1 to 2 times a week. Click on find out. It's a very simple process. And if you go down, it says over an entire year, your consumption of avocados is contributing 15 kilograms to your annual greenhouse gas emissions. That's the equivalent of driving a regular petrol car 39 miles, the same as heating the average home for 2 days. It's interesting when you see those comparisons, isn't it?
Certainly is. So in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, as things go, avocados are quite good. And say if you compared that with beef, for the same sort of amount of beef in terms of servings per week, it would be hundreds of times higher. But then when you look at water, actually growing avocados, you need a lot of water. So this avocado is equivalent to 54 showers lasting 8 minutes over the course of a year. So in terms of water impact, it's not great. So that's the sort of thing that people have to bear in mind, that it's not just greenhouse gas emissions, it's the effect that food is having on water. And the other big thing is land use. So if land with trees on is being cleared to grow, say, something like chocolate, then that's not good for the planet generally.
Just as a final thought, you know, we could all tie ourselves up in knots as consumers, you know, trying to make the right choices, but this is obviously a very useful tool. I guess for the people who campaign for buy local, you know, and reduce those food miles and so on, this sort of thing, this sort of call from scientists is right up their street.
Yeah, and there are messages coming out now also from the IPCC, the scientists behind the reports on climate change, what individuals can do. And so things like just thinking about food waste is a really sensible step, because I think there are quite a lot, about 8% of emissions are from food being thrown away, and thinking about what you buy. And again, some very complex decisions behind that, because if you take something like beef, for example, depending on how and where those cows are raised, it can have a very big difference on the impact of that food.
Really interesting. Helen, thank you very much. Now let's continue the morning.